Is quilting your jam? If so, then you are in the right place, my friend. This quilt wall hanging pattern is totally free. I designed it and it's all yours now. Click the link down in the description box just below this video. This quilt wall hanging makes for perfect scrap busting. I'm going to even show you how to make the hangers for the back of this wall hanging so you can easily hang it with just a pole or a dowel rod. I'm Tracy and this is the Sewing Channel. Enough talking already. Let's get busy. The first thing you need to do is go down in the description box and print out your free pattern. You should have 3 pages with this pattern. It's important to note that there's a 2-inch mark on this 3rd page. If your printer is set at 100%, then it will print properly and your home ruler will match up with that 2-inch line. And you can see there that that one did not. But when I printed out this one at 100%, it printed out perfectly at the 2-inch mark. That's how you know your scale is correct. Once that's all figured out, you're going to cut out all of your letter templates and your jam jar. You're going to get out your heat and bond, the slippery side up. You don't want to write on the bumpy side, only the slippery side. Now this is very important. When you go to trace out all of your templates onto your heat and bond, you need to trace them backwards. Here are all my letters and my jam jar all traced out onto my heat and bond. The next important thing to note is that when you go to cut out these letters on the heat and bond, you need to rough cut them. Do not cut them on the line or you'll be sad that you did. And if a letter like the G and the A have a circle in them, leave that heat and bond on there. Don't cut that out. This is how you transfer the heat and bond sticky stuff to the fabric. Lay the bumpy side of your cutout on the wrong side of your fabric. Following the directions at a medium heat iron, I believe it is, go ahead and just press that onto the fabric. You'll be able to see after a couple of passes with the hot iron that it is stuck on there pretty good. Now it's time to finally cut on those lines that you made when you originally traced the templates on. By cutting on that line now, you're getting a nice clean line. If we would have not done the rough cut, it would have been really hard to cut out our template pieces. And just like that, we have the top of our jam jar. Isn't it darling? For our quilt top fabric, it should measure about 22 inches by 25 inches, and that will give us plenty of room to be able to cut some off. Here I've marked the top and the bottom. In order to keep our lines of our letters straight, we need to find the center of our piece of fabric. Fold it once, press it, fold it again, and press it. And you should have, once I open that up, a cross in the middle right there. Find that center line, and then you're going to measure 2 3/4 inches up from that line. You can make a bunch of marks all across there, just like I did, and then you're going to turn your ruler and just draw a line connecting the dots. Next, we're going to go to that center line again, but this time we're going to measure down toward the bottom 3 inches and make a mark all the way across at 3 inches, and then draw your line, just like you see me doing there. Now you're going to find that center line again, and this time we're going to go down, but this time 8 inches. So line it up and make all of your 8-inch marks all across. And then you're going to turn your ruler and then make a straight line. Once you have these lines marked, now it's time to set up our letters. This is also the time when I take the backings off of the letters, because that's the neat thing about this heat and bond. Once you peel that backing off, you're left with this kind of shiny plasticky side on the letter. It doesn't stick to anything just yet. You have to apply heat for it in order for it to stick. You'll set the word quilting on that top line, and it's important to note too that L and T That is the center in between those two letters. That's kind of what I went off of. And you can see there the I I'm pointing to. I have that kind of just underneath the Q. And you'll want to line these up kind of like I do, I guess, or you can line them up any way that you want. Like the word my, I made it look a little bit more fun instead of putting it just straight. I even placed my letter J half below the line and half above the line. Make sure that there is even spacing between each letter too. And be sure to place your jam jar lid in the same order that I have here. First, the scalloped edge, then that thin line, the blue, it's for the ribbon, and that curved piece, and then that long oval piece goes on the top. For some reason, I kept wanting to switch those two, so be sure that you do them in the right order. And here I'm going to use my little oval egg ironing board. I have a full tutorial on that cute little ironing board. I'll link it at the end. It's the perfect small size. I just slide it up underneath this quilt top, and then I press out all of the letters so that they all stick to our quilt top. You'll just keep on pressing until all of your letters are ironed down onto the quilt top. Since I used Heat and Bond Light, the purple Heat and Bond package, that means that I do have to stitch over top of these letters. If I would have gotten the red package of Heat and Bond, you could have just ironed that on and not have to stitch it. It will not come off in the wash. But since I did get the purple one, I will have to definitely stitch these down. So you can see here with the jam jar, I'm actually adding each piece and then ironing and then adding another one, almost layering it on top of one another. Now it's time to stitch applique these letters onto our quilt top. Now I used my free motion quilting foot, and you can too if you want. I only did it because it's much faster. It doesn't make as much of neat work. It looks kind of messier with the free motion quilting foot on, but it was a lot quicker. So it's up to you. You can do either way. Here's what mine looked like when I was done. It doesn't look too bad, but you can use a zigzag stitch or whatever you want to tack that down. Next, I tacked down a 17-inch piece of ribbon with my sewing machine, and then I tied it and then trimmed the tails off. Oh my word, that looks so cute. Now for this next step, you can pin baste or spray baste or however you want to baste it, you baste it that way. You'll want your backing and your batting to be bigger than your quilt top. And you can see here that I pin basted mine all together. That red mark that I was just pointing to, I put around the entire quilt top. It just gave me an imaginary line not to go over with my free motion quilting. And you can see here that I chose this beautiful light colored purple, and it's going to go really nice on this quilt. Now it's time to put some fun free motion quilting onto our wall hanging. This was the most fun of this whole project. I so enjoy free motion quilting. I did a bunch of different designs. I did swirls, and I did paisleys and pebbles and feathers and some other stuff I didn't even know what it was. But it was honestly just so much fun just to relax and free motion quilt this wall hanging. A lot of people will choose to free motion quilt onto the letters with the quilt sandwich all together, and you can see that I chose to do that on the quilt top only, just to tack down the letters first, and then I put my quilt sandwich together and free motion quilted. I think the advantage to the way that I did it with this quilt wall hanging was that it makes the letters pop a lot more. I mean, look how darling. I just love how the free motion quilting looks. I love how the letters just pop right up off of this quilt. Now, next I trim the corners off. And how I did that was I imagined about almost 2 inches all the way around the entire project area, meaning the letters and such and the jam jar. So it was roughly about 2 inches all the way around. And I put my big square ruler in the corner and then cut that corner off. And then I would go to the next corner and so on to the next corner. I even thought afterwards that a nice border would have looked nice on this, but I think it turned out cute just the way it is. You can make your corners curved, rounded like I did, or you can leave them squared off. It's totally up to you. I don't really see rounded corners on wall hanging, so that's why I wanted to give it a try and see how it looked. And it did not disappoint. To make the hangers on the back, I took a 5.5-inch square piece of fabric. I sliced it from corner to corner, and then I took the long end, folded it twice, pressed it, and then put a stitch right across both of them, hemming it in a sense. Then I rounded the corners to match the corners on our quilt hanging. And then I laid them down. I did add a little bit of glue on those back hangers so that they would stay in place while I put the binding on. Now you can see here I've switched it to the front of the quilt hanging, and I've put the binding all around and sewn it on. And then I put a few snips in the corners because it seemed a little tight right there. And once I did that, everything laid flat and loosened up. Be sure not to clip your thread though. Next, you're going to flip everything around to the back. I have lots of tutorials on my channel on how to bind your quilt, so you should check them out. I really love how this quilt wall hanging turned out, and I don't usually do wall hangings that are quilts, but when I thought of this one, I thought, oh yeah, and you know, it's because quilting is really my jam. Is it yours? You need to for sure let me know down in the comments if quilting is your jam. And hey, if you want the word sewing on there, just add an SEW instead of the quilt, and sewing can be your jam. Until next time on the Sewing Channel, take care.